It says here we should work in teams. Who wants to be my spotter?
I don't think you should be doing too much gambling tonight, Alan.
Gambling? Who said anything about gambling? It's not gambling when you know you're going to win.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of No Free Squares, your Week 9 DFS preview. It is hard to believe, truly hard to believe that we are now halfway through this entire season. It is truly bizarre when you think about how quickly an NFL slate goes. I mean, so many of us, our DFS year, especially myself, I mean, I play a little bit of NBA, not that much. I don't play MLB. I'm not one of those people playing Euro soccer. I'm not playing mixed martial arts. I have a life. When you have people that are playing around football slate, imagine if you're a basketball, DFS player. And this would be like 2.5 weeks is what an entire season is in the NFL. And so I know it's tough for folks that have had, a little bit of run bad, or you have a really great lineup, doesn't quite come together, and you're like, man, that's like one of my only shots. It can be tough. But today, all of that goes out the window. Today, we are focusing on a Week 9 slate that is bountiful, full of opportunities. We got some great folks here. Dave, my guy Dave, is in the chat. Matt is in the chat. Absolutely. As always, reminder, if you are watching via Twitter, make sure to comment on the specific Twitter post with it, and I will try to make sure to see that at some point. Or if you're coming here through YouTube, of course, just comment. I'll answer everything that you throw my way. Otherwise, we're going to do kind of what we always do on the show. For anyone that's new, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to walk through sort of a high-level overview of this slate. I'm probably going to talk a little bit about some things that went wrong with some lineups last week, close calls, etc. Then we're going to get into where those big opportunities are for potential leverage, where I'm going to be prioritizing, in my play this week in tournaments. And definitely any questions and everything you throw my way, I'm going to make sure to get to those. Ideally, DFS oriented, but whatever you ask me, I'm going to answer. Don't even worry about it. And then, of course, we're going to do our GPP roulette lineup of the week, where we're going to go through, we're going to spin the wheel. We're going to get 2 names based on the last 36 names that I've seen on my Twitter timeline this morning, and we're going to build a little lineup around that. Sound good? Hope that sounds good. All right, before we get into our lineup reviews, David says, quick seasonal question. Would you rather play Elijah Mitchell or Khalil Herbert? I need max upside. Pretty similar plays. I'd probably rather play Mitchell. Just he's got more of that breakaway speed. So if you're looking for max upside, I see higher odds of a 70, 80-yard touchdown run out of him. Probably Herbert, better chance to catch some passes, but I would not want to bank on Bears running back against the Pittsburgh Steelers for maximum upside. That does not seem like a maximum upside proposition to me. All right, I'm going to take a little 10-second water break. When we come back, we're going to talk through a little bit of what happened last week. We won't spend too much time on that, and then we'll get into the slate this week. I'll see you in just a few seconds. All right, let's talk through quickly what went down last week. Last week, if you made sure to check out the show, I was on with Chase Vernon or also known as FF_intervention. And look, we brought you Michael Carter last week. Major play from the dose score. Ended up being the #1 scoring running back on the entire slate. So did I win $1 million last week? No. Probably the closest I got to a major tournament win was taken away from me through not playing Michael Carter. If anyone read my article, it is up. It went up this morning, a little later than usual. It went up this morning up on Player Profiler, Week 9's Pareto Principles. And I talked through that lineup. I don't have Tom with me in the back today, so I'm just going to talk through it. I don't have all the screen share up. It's a little bit clunky. But essentially, my top lineup last week, it was a top 1% lineup, finished 17th in a small field tournament. And it was built around Colt stack with Wentz and with A.J. Brown. And I put in Jonathan Taylor too. Small field lineup, only I think 290 people in that one. And so I was like, let's just get every touchdown on the Colts. We'll bring it back with A.J. Brown. Problem is, of course, Pittman, 1,000,000% owned. A.J. Brown was really highly owned in that small field contest, and a lot of ownership on Wentz, even a lot of ownership on Taylor, right? So how do we navigate this? I'm already playing Taylor in one of the running back slots. Last week, it was all about Henderson and Swift in those 2 running back slots. Especially in small fields, they were up around 45% rostered each. If you work down more into casual contests, work down more into the million maker, maybe you get around 25, 30%. Basically, my options are I could play one of them, or, I really wanted to play Cup. And I thought Taylor was the same price as Swift. I was just going to play Taylor instead of Swift. That was my main leverage point. And now do I play Henderson, and then I can do what I want to do at wide receiver, or do I play Cup? I'm not going to play Cup and Henderson in this lineup. And then I got to spin down a running back. And I did both, honestly. I did both versus this lineup. But in this one, I played Cup. And then it was, okay, what do I do with the secondary correlation in my lineup? And ultimately, what ended up happening was I ended up picking the wrong horse. I went with Zach Moss and Jalen Waddle instead of Michael Carter and T. Higgins. And that's just the way it goes. That's the difference between 17th place and second place in a tournament. Reason for that, I thought that playing Moss was a little bit of leverage off of Josh Allen stacks. I thought in a small field, I thought we could get like up to 25, 30% Josh Allen rostership. We didn't. It was like 13%. So in hindsight, probably not the greatest, but sometimes it's a little hard to get the ownership right in those small fields. I talked about a lot of that stuff. I did a lot of stuff on the review in my article. So if you want to check that out, Proto Principles up on playerprofiler.com. Look at this. I have my producer in hand, all of a sudden working his magic behind the scenes. Tom Tipple is here. We're going to take a very, very short break. And then we're going to come back and we're going to come right down to Narrative Street. We're going to talk through the setup of this week's slate. It's a really fun one. It's a really flat slate. There's a lot of options. I'm excited to talk that through with you all. And I will be back in just a second. All right, look at that. This is true chemistry right here. Odell Beckham and Baker Mayfield, they struggle for true chemistry. But Tom and I have going right now, he comes in 5 minutes after live. He texts me in the private chat. He says, "What's next?" I don't even have time to go in and type. So I have to cue him with what to go with as I'm talking in the show. Tom immediately picks up the cues. He's got the right graphics up on the screen. That's true magic right here that we got working right now. If Baker and Odell had that kind of chemistry, Odell Beckham would have 2,000 yards this year. No question about it. So let's talk through the slate this week. Big things that jump out. All these games kind of suck. The only game on the slate with a total of 50 or higher right now is the Baltimore Ravens and the Minnesota Vikings, and that game is a total of exactly 50. So that's the highest total we get on the slate. Yes, absolutely, Tom. Tom and Jacob over Odell and Baker. That's a bummer. Right? Normally, we've seen these slates where there's this clear game. You see, Kansas City, Tennessee a few weeks ago. You remember the 2 Dallas games, the one they had against the Panthers, the one they had against the Chargers. These really, really sky-high slates. Nothing like that this week. And so what does that mean? Number one, it kind of flattens the ownership. I never really finalized what exactly I think the ownership is going to be until later on tonight. But from where I'm feeling right now, I'd be pretty surprised if we saw, barring late injury news, there's a lot of that. But I'd be pretty surprised right now if we saw any player like up over 25% in large field tournaments. I think top owned players right now that I'm expecting to come through, probably Ezekiel Elliott and Austin Eckler seem to be the top 2 running backs. But I don't think it's going to be anything like we saw with Henderson and Swift last week. There's just more good running backs to play. You can play Kamara in a good matchup against the Falcons. You can play Dalvin Cook, who's underpriced, 7,700. We'll talk about Christian McCaffrey potentially. There's lots of guys there. Wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, certainly going to be very popular. I think he's the clear spend-up option this week on a slate where Devontae Adams is stuck with Jordan Love and Cooper Kupp is off the slate. So I think a lot of people are going to go with Hill. And then Diggs probably being the secondary option in that spend-up zone. I could see both those guys in, the 20% range. And Amari Cooper, I think, probably going to be next to them because he's just horrendously underpriced at $5,700, especially compared to CeeDee Lamb, who's $7,200. And frankly, those guys should be the exact same. Yes, Tom, Baker and Odell could have been something. I spent last night just like watching all 22 of Odell's routes this year, and it's tough. It's tough. But we must move forward. We will talk about the new Cleveland Browns today. Wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Love is around 25%. I would be very surprised if Jordan Love is around 25%. Yeah, let's talk about this game. Why not? I think that this game here is interesting. So originally, I thought Jordan Love was not going to be that popular because I thought people would play Taysom Hill. Of course, you can't play Taysom Hill because now Trevor Siemian is going to be starting for the New Orleans Saints, and I don't think anyone's going to want to play Trevor Siemian in tournaments. I think that people will play. Tom does these banners. That's why I'm laughing at things that it probably looks like I'm typing. I think that Jordan Love is a great cash play. I will probably have Jordan Love in my cash lineup. I think I'll either go Jordan Love at 4,400. This is DraftKings pricing, or Jalen Hurts at 6,700 in my cash lineup. I haven't fully made that decision yet, but those are the two I'm looking at. I think Jordan Love's a great cash play. Just he allows you to get so many other things in. My issue with Jordan Love as a tournament play is the correlation aspect of it. Yes, it allows you to reach higher point per dollar aspects out there, but you're probably not going to win a tournament without correlation, especially on this kind of slate. Like there aren't that many clear, best plays available on a per dollar level. We just talked about how the ownership is projecting to be really flat. And you get all of these different games that are coming in with pretty similar ownership, pretty similar totals. To me, I think a lot of people have the attitude when they see that situation, they go, okay, well, I don't want to play any massive stacks this week because all these games are just kind of crappy. I'm just going to try and pick out a couple plays from each because if all these games have 42 points, it might only be one or two players that go off from each. I have a different approach to that. My approach is just, all right, all these games are kind of equally bad. Let's just pick 2 or 3 that I think have the best chance of going over and just stack the crap out of them. And then if the game hits, I win, right? If the game hits, I win because you're going to see less correlated lineups around the industry. You're going to see less leverage opportunities because there's just not as many places to get leverage off of because nobody's all that owned. And so I want to correlate harder. And to me, how are you going to maximize that with Jordan Love? Like, do you want to play Devontae Adams at $8,200 with Jordan Love as his quarterback? I don't. Like, to me, Devontae Adams with Jordan Love is probably like a $7,000 player. So whatever money you're saving with Jordan Love, you're kind of giving back on the value of Adams. So I don't know, maybe you can do like Jordan Love plus Marquez Valdes-Scantling because he probably only needs one or two long catches to pay off. And then you bring back with Tyreek Hill or with Travis Kelce. I think that's fine. But to me, I think there's going to be an approach that people take where they just build without a game stack. They just build Love and then they build whatever the lineup they want to do. Say they want to do a Mahomes stack, right? Say they build essentially the skeleton framework of like Mahomes plus Travis Kelce plus Tyreek Hill plus MVS, but they decide I'll just play, Jordan Love instead of Mahomes. That's fine. But some people will take it and say, okay, I'm going to build the Lamar stack, right? Lamar is the most popular quarterback on the slate, it seems. So I'm going to pick, Lamar, Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews, and I'll bring it back with Adam Thielen. Okay, but instead of Lamar, I'll just play Jordan Love because it's cheaper and allow me to fit in other guys. Yeah, I think it's fine. I just think you're kind of limiting your upside a little bit, and I prefer to look at other things. So, very long story short, I don't think Jordan Love will be 25% owned. I think he'll be like 5 to 8% owned in large field tournaments, but I could be wrong. Pretty volatile there. Another thing I want to talk about is the injuries this week. I've talked a lot in past episodes, past articles about how we approach injuries. And I've talked about specifically like Darren Waller, Foster Moreau. That was a situation where you have to be really aggressive. Either we're going to get Darren Waller healthy at reduced ownership. That's awesome. Or we're going to get Foster Moreau coming in who's just really underpriced for the role he's going to have. That's awesome. Either way, it's awesome. Different story this week with some of these games. I mean, you got a late game of San Francisco, Arizona, where I think every single offensive starter for both teams is legitimately questionable. You have Deebo Samuel, who seems very much 50-50 at this juncture. Elijah Mitchell seems legitimately 50-50 at this juncture. And then you have Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, who are game-time decisions. Sounds like probably both maybe a little bit on the doubtful side of questionable. I mean, this is a situation where it's a little bit harder. right? It's not like you have Darren Waller in your lineup, and then you plug in Moreau and you have one swap elsewhere. I mean, if you're planning to stack this Cardinals-Niners game, that seems like a great idea with a healthy Kyler Murray. You take Kyler Murray out, like you're not doing a stack with Colt McCoy. That's not going to happen. You're not going to do that. So you really have to have a lot of backup plans and contingencies in order. And I think it's like a little bit worth it. I mean, this week, if you do actually get Kyler playing, I mean, when else are you ever going to get a week where you get Kyler Murray at like 4% owned, 5% owned? I mean, that feels super possible this week because if you just look at the slate, I mean, all the other quarterbacks in Kyler Murray's price range, you have Josh Allen. Where does he play? Plays in the early games. Lamar Jackson. When does he play? He's playing in the early games, right? And so the only quarterbacks left in the late games, you have Mahomes. All right, people might swap off Mahomes, but I mean, then you might get Mahomes under own, right? And then it's Jordan Love for cheap. You have Herbert and Hurts. They're about 1,000 under. And then, Jimmy Garoppolo, whatever. So I think a lot of people that have, spend up lines won't have Murray. I would like my personal approach to that is I'm going to be really overweight on Herbert lineups, like egregiously. And then this is if we don't get news on Kyler like tonight, late breaking. I'm going to be really overweight on Herbert lineups. And then if news breaks the right way and Kyler and Hopkins are both in, I'll just pivot half of those to Kyler lineups. And then I'm going to be able to get overweight on both. And I'm going to talk about why I like the Chargers anyways. And if it doesn't ride that way, then I'll just kind of make do in my lineups. I might switch some over to Hurts potentially. Might switch some over to Mahomes potentially. But I want to prioritize that flexibility. And then similar, with Debo and Elijah Mitchell, I think those are more traditional how we've talked about. Like Debo, always a good play. If he's coming in under owned because of the injury, then I want to play him. If he does not play, then I really want to play Brandon Ayuk because he's only $4,100. There's no Debo. And same with Mitchell and with Jeff Wilson. Both of those very, very attractive to me. That's the injuries. We talked about sort of the general thoughts on all of these different low total games, how I attack them. One other thing I want to talk about, and it's especially so in these low total spots, like really highly owned 5K wide receivers. So we saw this last week. We saw Michael Pittman come in just absolutely redonkulously owned. I talked about this with Chase on the show. I said I thought he was going to be 23% owned, and he said I was crazy for that. He came in small field stuff. He came in like over 30% owned. Absolutely ludicrous. And yet, Carson Wentz was only about 10% owned. And then A.J. Brown came in most of those terms like 15% owned. So what I have to wonder, and Derrick Henry was barely played at all. That means essentially 15% of people went in and they just solely played Michael Pittman. Right? And hindsight will frame that was probably not very sharp. I mean, even in the events that happened, which the Michael Pittman scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, if you had a Michael Pittman lineup, congratulations. Congrats on your Michael Pittman lineup. You and everybody else get to advance to the next stage, right? You and everybody else, all your closest friends, 33% of people who play Michael Pittman, right? But half of those people also played Wentz, who was in a lot of ideal lineups. I know he wasn't the highest scoring quarterback, but he was almost as highly scoring as Stafford and Allen and Brady, and he was way, way cheaper. So you can put better lineups with him. Half of those people, or probably a little less, had A.J. Brown, who was, I believe, the highest scoring wide receiver on the entire slate. Maybe behind Pittman. I don't know. They're similar. So, you're probably better off with Pittman Brown than with Pittman, whoever else you had instead of Brown. I don't know, Pittman, DJ Moore. Maybe if you had Pittman Godwin, then you're still alive, right? Either way, like you're better off correlating that lineup. And then, of course, what if Pittman had totally sucked? Then your lineup just sucks because you have a 33% guy who totally sucks. The point is, it's just such a lose-lose. And so applying that to a situation like this week, I mean, you're going to get Amari Cooper, I think, 20% owned across the board, similar to Pittman. And I think in smaller fields, he's probably going to creep up into the 30% range. He's at $5,700. He's just not a $5,700 player. He's probably a $6,500 player. His role this year, for the most part, other than the games that he was kind of in and out due to injury, has been pretty much identical to Lamb's. Lamb is at $7,200. I think Lamb's overpriced, Cooper's underpriced. what are you getting out of playing a wide receiver specifically that has to score touchdowns, helping someone else? It's not like a running back. Like, I understand that Zeke is really high owned. Okay. I'm not averse to playing high owned players. If you build a contrarian stack, you don't have a lot of ownership of the rest of your lineup, you want to plug in Zeke 25%, sure, plug in Zeke 25%. That's absolutely fine. Because when Zeke scores touchdowns, he kind of, in a way, he hurts things around him. Like, every time he scores, he takes touchdown away from Dak, he takes touchdown away from Lamb, away from Cooper. He's going to pick up first downs, he's going to plot his way down the field, he's going to keep Denver off the field. It's a very self-contained way of scoring points, right? But when Amari Cooper scores points, it really helps everybody else. Amari physically can't score points without Dak getting points too. And going and scoring a long touchdown, that puts Denver back on the field, right? And I think it's kind of a similar situation to me. If you're going to play Cooper, I would just play the stack, especially if you're playing like Cooper and Alberto Cuebunam, who is the other guy I want to talk about. Last week we saw Dan Arnold creep up to 40% rostered in some small field tournaments, and that's Dan Fricken Arnold. Albert Cuebunam might hit like the 40 to 50 to 60% range in certain small field tournaments. He's $2,600. He's awesome. He runs a 4.49 at 258 pounds. So he's basically AJ Brown in the body of a middle linebacker. And people have just been dying to play this guy. They love this guy. I love this guy. I don't think I can bring myself to do it outside of Cowboy stacks. It's just going to be so egregiously over-owned that if you can just pick any tight end that outscores him, you're just starting ahead of like half your field in small field stuff. If you want to play him in like larger field, the millie, where he's maybe more to like 20% owned, I think it's fine. But you better have a pretty under-owned lineup around him. And I guess my thing is, like, if you're going to chase chalk anywhere, right? Like, why would you chase chalk at the $2,600 punt tight end? That just doesn't seem like the best place to get that ceiling. Like last week, there was legitimate fear. Oh my God, I'm going to fade Darrell Henderson against the Texans. He could put up 40 and then he ends my week. Alberto Cuebunam is not going to put up 40 and end your week. He's not. Maybe he's going to get 15. Maybe he's going to get 20. So yeah, Tom in the chat says the Podfather is pumping Alberto. I bet he will be highly owned. Yeah, absolutely, and for good reason. Like, I'm pumping Alberto. I think when Noah Fant got declared out with COVID, I was like 2 minutes later, I was popping out a tweet with Alberto. I love Alberto. It's just, like, think about it this way. How many points do you expect Noah Fant to score each week? 12, right? So you have cheaper Noah Fant, which is why he's a good play. Because if you get 12 points at $2,600 tight end, that's good. But that's not insurmountable. Here's what I'm going to be doing. I'll talk about this by plays of the week. I'm spending up a tight end. Because I'm just going to try and pace out these Alberto teams and say, okay, come catch me. All right. We talked about a lot there. Hope that made some sense. Hope that wasn't too rambling. Probably was. When we come back, we're going to discuss my plays of this week. And we'll be right back one sec. All right, here we go. Plays of the week. And David in the chat. Yes, David. Yes, this is how we are rolling. This is how we are understanding DFS right here. Do you think Jerry Judy will be under-owned? Does everyone will be jamming Albert O? Yes, I absolutely do. Jerry Judy, $5,000. Pretty affordable, projects quite well. Last week, he was creeping up $10,000 or $10,000, around 10% ownership at certain fields at $4,900. I think he might be lower than that because everybody will be jamming Alberto. Absolutely. I like Jerry Judy this week. I'm going to probably play a lot of Jerry Judy this week. I think he's underpriced. I think that if Albert O was not a thing this game, if it was just regular Noah Fant Broncos, I bet Jerry Judy would be 15 to 20% owned. And I think that would be efficient. And I think that now, he might come in more like 8 to 10% owned, when realistically, without Fant, is a better play than he would have been with Fant, right? So, yes, I think Judy is a very sharp play this week. And especially if you want to play Zeke Cooper, who are going to be super, super owned, bring it back with Judy instead. Or Sutton. A little more expensive at $1,500. But I don't think anyone's going to play Sutton. People are going to go, okay, Alberto, Alberto's super cheap. Punt. We're going to play Alberto. Okay, what if I don't want to play Alberto? I'll pivot to Judy. No one is going to be playing. Cortland Sutton. It says currently thinking about a Dax, CD, Cooper, Judy stack. That is one where I would probably play that in small fields only, like really small fields. I just think that CD and Cooper, I don't think that Dallas passes enough for me to want to play CD and Cooper in the same lineup in large fields. I think it's really hard to envision a scenario where Dallas is a large favorite. They pass below league expectation in neutral script this year. They're, I believe, a 10-point favorite in this game. I don't think they're going to pass the ball enough to get 30 from Cooper and 30 from Lamb. And there has been 0 optimal lineups this year. Sorry, 1. There's been 1. Cortland Sutton in week 2. There's been 1 optimal lineup this entire year that had a wide receiver, 5K and higher, who scored under 30 points, who made it into an optimal lineup. So essentially, if you're ever going to play Dak plus CD plus Cooper in a large field where you need an optimal lineup, you have to bet that CD and Cooper can both get 30. Both get 30, right? So I don't like to play those premium doubles. I would rather play Dak plus Cooper plus Schultz, for instance. Or I'd rather play, Dak plus CD plus Cedric Wilson, something like that. Or just single it. Or play Dak plus Zeke plus Cooper, Dak plus Zeke plus CD. I think that's fine because you can capture extra yardage. Dave says you're scared of the trail on Dick Stream. Yeah, I'm not going to even respond to that. This is not a show where we talk about cornerback matchups. Single entry free max. This is something I want to address. Let's actually talk about this quick. I will talk about plays of the week eventually, but this is a good conversation. This I don't think is quite the way I would frame it. I don't think it matters how many entries people are allowed to put in each. I think it matters how many entries there are total. So, like, you put in a single entry 23,000 person tournament. I think that a Dak plus Cooper plus Lamb lineup is actually quite poor. But it could be a multi-entry, tournament with 400 entries, and I think it's totally fine, right? Because if you think about it, I don't think it's about the single entry. What you have to think about is, okay, your lineup, you have Dak, Lamb, Cooper, right? So your bet is that the Cowboys are going to throw 4 touchdowns, right? Yeah, and he's saying I try to stick to 1,000 people or less. I think if that's fine, although even in 1,000, I probably wouldn't play it that much. Like I would play that lineup in like a 200-person contest. And basically, the reason I would do that is because you look at Dax ownership. Let me pull up Dax projected ownership right now. I think it's going to be like 8%. Is that right? Let's see. I have it at 7% right now. But I don't know. Let's say between 5 and 10, right? So let's say Dak comes in, 5%. Or even 10% owned a 200-person contest. That means only 20 people have Dak lineups, right? And so now, okay, maybe you lose the ceiling, right? Let's say one of Cooper or Lamb has the ceiling game. They get you 30. Dak gets you 30. The other one gets 15. Can you beat the other 19 Dak teams, right? Maybe they mostly do singles. So maybe half of them don't have Lamb, and Lamb's the piece that goes for 30. Can you beat those other Cooper teams? Or the teams that don't have Cooper, but you do. Cooper only got 15 points. Can you beat those other 10? Probably you can. It's only 10 teams. You do that at a 20,000 person tournament. Now you're competing against like probably 500 other teams that have Dak, who scored 30, and Lamb, who scored 30, that aren't sitting on a 15 from Cooper, right? They could be sitting on a 30 from someone else. And so you're probably not winning that tournament. You're probably not going to be the best of those 500 teams with 15 points from Cooper in your lineup. But yes, 100,000 people, I think it's fine. Although I would go even less for that. All right, what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about plays of the week. Number 1 play of the week. I was already going to mention Judy because I really like Judy. But my number 1 stand is Travis Kelce this week. Darren Waller is underpriced this week, and he is attracting most of the ownership in the spend up at tight end range. And then you got everybody spending down to Alberto Quabenum. And then, as we already talked about at the top, no Cooper Kupp on the slate. Devontae Adams has a Jordan Love problem. All of a sudden, everyone's playing Tyreek Hill. Everyone has a lot of reasons to play Tyreek Hill. Everybody has a lot of reasons to not play Travis Kelce. We also saw Travis Kelce like a little bit geriatric on Monday night. Tom, I know, is behind the scenes right now. He had a Mahomes-Kelsey stack on Monday night, and he was in a lot of pain watching that entire game. It's a very painful experience if you were depending on Travis Kelce on Monday night, and he did that on national television. So that's an issue with Kelce. But we are talking about that in this house. Yeah, I'm going back to the well, baby. I mean, we'll see. I'll tell you what, I'm not the first person to have this thought. I've heard other people talk about this, so I don't think that it's exactly that original. I would bet that as you get into higher stakes tournaments, potentially, you'll probably see Kelce's ownership seep up. But just general, if you're playing like the play action, if you're playing the slant, if you're playing the millie, I mean, I think Kelce's going to be less than 0.5% owned of Hill. And to me, that's just one of those classic ones where I think any given week, either one of them can be the slate breaker. It's kind of the same as Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones to me. It's like my rule of thumb is if either of them is ever over twice percent the amount owned as the other, then you just play the other one, because there's neither of them is ever 2 times as likely to go off as the other one. And that's how I feel about these guys. You know, if Kelce gets you 7 for 101, right? That's 26 DraftKings points. Like, then all those Okwebunom teams, even if he has a good game, even if he gets 4 for 40 and a touchdown, like let's say he gets you 4 for 40 touchdown, he gets 14. You have Kelce who gets 26. Okay, run me down, Albert Okwebunom teams. Sure, you have the extra salary, but now you have to gain 12 points on me somewhere, right? You have to gain 12 points on me somewhere. Maybe you get that a wide receiver, right? But if I play Travis Kelce and he gets 30, you know who probably doesn't get 30? Tyreek Hill. You know who you're probably going to be trying to chase me down with on those Albert O teams? Tyreek Hill. So I'm getting an advantage over the Albert Okwebunom teams by playing Kelce if he gets that score, right? I'm already up in points. And then the way that the pricing works is you're probably trying to chase me down at that points advantage with Hill, and you're going to be unsuccessful because Kelce just caught all the touchdowns he wanted Hill to catch. So how are you going to chase me down now? I don't know. So if Kelce comes in 10%, I mean, he's just an absolute smash. I'm going to play someone with Kelce. In terms of a game level that I really like the Chargers. I talked about this, but everything I'm seeing, Herbert looking under 10%, Keenan Allen looking under 10%, a lot of negative Mike Williams discourse. His ADOT is back up, the target share is back down. People are wondering if this is just a mirage for the first month. Maybe it is. I don't know. 1 game sample, though. I'm willing to pay to find out. That's for sure. Austin Eckler, though, everybody's playing Eckler. It's this weird situation where everyone is all in the running back in this spot, but it doesn't seem like there's going to be all that many people on the passing side of this. And of course, if you want to play Eckler, you can play Herbert with Eckler. I mean, Eckler is just as likely to catch a receiving touchdown as he is score a rushing touchdown. I play Herbert with Eckler. That's totally fine. I understand, why you might be more inclined to look at the running back in this spot with Philly, but frankly, it doesn't really make sense with Eckler to me. This seems really inefficient. Eckler does best when they're losing. The Eckler ceiling game is a close game or negative script because he's catching a bunch of passes. It's kind of like Alvin Kamara. I mean, Tom, who's behind the scenes, is like the biggest Alvin Kamara fan I know. The last thing you want if you're an Alvin Kamara owner is the Saints to win 28-10. That's not usually when you get the best Alvin Kamara games. Best Alvin Kamara games are usually, either back and forth or they're chasing points and they're checking down to him repeatedly. It's the same with Swift. It's the same with McCaffrey. It's the same with Austin Eckler. So to me, having Austin Eckler be, way up over these other Chargers doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense because I think they all benefit from the same script. They're actually quite correlated. Very different than Zeke versus Cooper and Lamb, where okay, I think Dallas is going to win by a lot. I want to play Zeke. I think Dallas is going to be chasing points. I want to play the receivers. I think Eckler and Allen and Williams all correlate really well together. It's just whoever gets in the box. So to me, I like Eckler this week. It's fine, but it's also just a 1.5 point spread. So I don't really know. I think people are acting as though they're going to blow the Eagles out of the water. Vegas certainly doesn't think they're going to. And then you get this element of where Herbert's been kind of bad the last couple weeks, but we also know he has a really big ceiling. We've seen him show that ceiling. Massive ceiling in the Chiefs game, massive ceiling in the Browns game. And the Browns are, the Browns are a better defense than Philly. Philly? What, because they beat Detroit? You think they have a good defense? Absolutely not. So I'm going to be firing up Herbert, and you get the added benefit of it being in the late game. And I always love playing game stacks in the late game because you get to watch your early game pieces play out. And, if you're doing really well and you want to pivot to something chalkier, you can do that, right? Like let's say that I, have a running back and a wide receiver playing in that early game, and they both get me 25 points. And I'm now looking at a Jared Cook, Mike Williams, and Justin Herbert stack. And I go, you know what? Like, everything is coming up Jacob right now. I'm in first place this tournament, or I'm projected I could be first place this tournament. I'll just play Eckler with the stack instead. I'll play Eckler instead of Mike Williams, and I'll add in Tyreek Hill. Right? Great. Now I can just play the chalk. Come get me. Or things don't go so great the early games. Okay, now I'm going to pivot even more. I'm going to get even weirder. I like to have that flexibility. Other one I really like, this one is a bit of a cautionary tale because I think that this game should be like really heavily owned, but I'm not seeing that show up in the projections yet. And I'm kind of scared that eventually it's going to catch up and it's going to be higher owned than it currently seems to be projecting. And that is the Dolphins and the Texans. I love playing these teams with super high neutral pass rates as heavy favorites because they don't care when they get up. And everything I'm seeing is that Gaskin is actually projecting for higher ownership than Waddle and Gesicki. And I think that is absolutely forking insane. I mean, Gaskin has done his best when they're chasing points. He's been a passing down back. He's not just grinding between the tackles. You don't even know if he's going to get the goal line carries. They're just as likely to hand it off to Sullivan Ahmed. So I'm like not going to, I mean, are you kidding me? Myles Gaskin, potentially 15% owned? Give me a break. No chance am I going to touch that. But I'll play Tua, absolutely. And with Parker out, I mean, didn't we just do this 2 weeks ago where we just played Tua with Waddle and Gesicki against the Falcons and we printed money? Like, we just did this. And they weren't owned then. I thought they were going to be more owned then. They weren't actually that highly owned. They were owned enough, but not highly owned. I think if it's like 10%, 10%, 10%, I think that's an absolute smash. And the best part yet is Houston might not be total dog crap anymore. When they had Tyrod Taylor at quarterback in the first game and a half, they were actually competitive. They destroyed the Jaguars. It's the Jaguars. They were leading against the Browns. With Tyrod, I'm like totally fine playing a run back in this spot. I think Nico Collins at like $3,400 is super viable. I think Brandon Cooks is always really viable. And, with this running back situation with Houston, you can't play any of them, I don't think. But I think you can easily do a 3+1 in this game, and it doesn't look to be that highly owned. And if you can play a 3+1 in this game, and you turn over the cards after the early game, and you're sitting there, okay, it's only like 10% owned across the board. Then you can play Albert Quay-Benam. You can play Austin Eckler. You can play Zeke. You can play these guys that have all this ownership. So that's the game I'd watch closely. I had this question. I'm going to address two questions that I had in the Discord today. If anyone's unaware, I recently joined the Bulletproof Discord where I have a little DFS channel, do some Q&A with folks. And I got two really good questions I wanted to bring up on the show today. One of them was, how do you project ownership? And like, I don't have like exact ownership projections. I don't do that. But here's basically your paths. Number one, you pay for a subscription to a site that does that. So Establish the Run, Roto Grinders, Daily Roto, any of those sites, they all have projected ownership. Okay. Log in, you see it. PFF does it for free. I use PFF throughout the week as a guide. I don't think that their projected ownership is very accurate, frankly. I think like Roto Grinders and ETR do a way better job, but it gets you in the right headspace. And then you also just look at projections. I mean, there's plenty of different projection sources you can see for free. You can do your own. You can do whatever. And whoever projects the best at the lowest salary is probably going to be the most owned, right? It's just kind of intuitive that way. And especially when you combine that with a game with a good total. And then you do the kind of stuff that I talk about every week in my column. And you look at, okay, are there high-priced running backs on the slate you want to play? Are there high-priced tight ends? Are there punt tight ends? Are there punt quarterbacks? How does this affect how people are spending out in other places? I talk about this every week in the Pareto principles where we go through this process. And you can use that to try and infer a lot of ownership that maybe doesn't show up in the projections. So you can get that extra little bit of edge. And then lastly, I would just advise listening to shows like this one, right? But ideally ones that like more people listen to because people move the market, right? Like I listen to content all the time not because I want to hear what they're playing because it'll influence me. Some shows I do. But mostly because I want to hear what the people are going to play after listening to those shows, right? So right when I get off the show, I'm going to listen to Jordan Cooper's Saturday DraftKings question and answer. And I'll shout out Jordan Cooper. I think he's one of the greatest in the industry. Am I going to adjust everything that I'm planning on playing because of what Jordan Cooper is going to play? Probably not. I mean, if he makes like a really good point that I haven't thought of, yeah, maybe. But that's not really my plan. My plan is that I know that probably hundreds of people are going to listen to his show and then make lineups based on what he's playing. And so I'm going to go in and say, oh, shoot, if he's playing a lot of the Kirk Cousins stacks today, maybe Kirk Cousins is going to be owned a little bit more than I thought. And, the same thing that I'm going to do if I listen to like the Fantasy Footballers DFS show. To be entirely honest, I don't care what the Fantasy Footballers DFS show has to say in terms of my DFS plays. But I do care that thousands and thousands of people are listening to their show and then they're building lineups. And you can actively see this with certain players like DJ Moore last week. I wrote in my column that I wrote on Thursday, I thought DJ Moore was going to be about 5% owned. That's what he projected at the time. I talked about him and Deontay Johnson. And Deontay Johnson stayed that low owned. Now, I watched throughout the rest of the week what other people were saying. And I made the same case for Moore. I made the same case for Johnson. And I saw a lot of people make the exact same case for Moore that I was making. He projects well. It's a good game. He's going to be under-owned because of XX factors. Sure enough, turn over the cards. And in large field stuff, DJ Moore, 8%. In small field stuff, higher stake stuff, or more people are listening to content, he ended up being 16% owned at one of my contests, more owned than AJ Brown, right? That doesn't just happen organically. People are just listening to people steam DJ Moore, and everyone's like, oh, DJ Moore's going to be under-owned. DJ Moore's going to be under-owned. DJ Moore's going to be under-owned. Guess what? Not so under-owned anymore. That's number one. And then the other question that I got that was really great in the Discord was, if you're going to be playing a lot of Dolphins, for instance, would you also play Tyrod Taylor just to correlate? And yes and no. Yes and no is the answer to that. So number one would be like 2 weeks ago, for instance, Dolphins Falcons. I really liked the game. I didn't have any particular lean that like I like the Dolphins side or like the Falcons side. My angle was I like this game. So I played a lot of Falcons lineups and I played a lot of Dolphins lineups. So I played Tua and I played Matt Ryan. That wasn't to correlate my lineups together. It was just because I really liked the game, but I didn't have a strong lean on which side. So I wanted to play both. But for instance, this week, like I'm really into the Herbert side. I'm actually not that into the Hurts side, just because they've been so much more run heavy that I think Hurts is a better cash play than tournament play. So would it correlate my lineups together to have like more Hurts lineups? I guess, but I don't really care about correlating my lineups together. I care about correlating within my lineups. Every time I open a new lineup, it's a new lineup, right? If I make 20 lineups this week, like probably my week will be defined by how my best lineup performs. If I have like one top 1% lineup, which is all I can really hope for, 20 lineups, that's 5 times, higher than your expected rate. And that lineup finishes, 100th in a tournament, then it's a losing week. If that lineup finishes 10th in a tournament, it's probably a winning week. And it really just comes down to that lineup. So am I going to waste the time of correlating my lineups together? No. There's definitely weeks where, like, as a whole, I'm like, man, one of my strategies this week is I'm probably fading Derrick Henry on the whole, so, well, rip Henry, but let's use this week's example, Austin Eckler, right? I said I'm going to be underweight on Eckler this week. Not because I don't think he's a good play. I think he's a really good play, in fact. That's why he's so owned. But I'm going to be underweight on Eckler. However, out of 20 lineups, right, he's going to be about 25% of the field. Am I going to have him in 5 lineups? No. Will I have him in 0 lineups? No. I'll probably have like 2 lineups where I have Austin Eckler. And then I'm going to have to build around there. But in that lineup, I'm not thinking about any of my other lineups where I'm fading Eckler. I'm like, no, this lineup, Austin Eckler is scoring 40 points. And I'm going to make this lineup around him the best that I can. That makes sense. And I think you have to apply those blinders against yourself. All right, when we come back quick, we're going to hit Sneaky Athlete of the Week. And then we are going to do then we're going to run through the GPP roulette wheel. Sorry, I've been yammering a lot, but I got a fun questions in the Discord. And David, you've had a lot of great stuff to say throughout. So wanted to make sure to address that. We'll be back with the Sneaky Athlete of the Week in just 1 second. All right, y'all. This week's Sneaky Athlete of the Week, I'm in mourning. I was so excited for Taysom Hill to be the Sneaky Athlete of the Week this week, and it didn't happen because Sean Payton is an absolute hater. He hates fun. he hates excitement, and he hates fantasy managers. But this week's Sneaky Athlete of the Week is a man who so sneakily, caught a one-handed touchdown that it didn't even count because they said he was out of bounds. That's how sneaky this was. It is also so sneaky, his athleticism, because he is 39 freaking years old and still playing in the National Football League. And it is so sneaky that he would be this athletic, even though he is named after one of the fastest cars you can drive, Mercedes Lewis, the immortal Mercedes Lewis. This week's Sneaky Athlete of the Week. They have no Robert Tonyan, of course. May he rest in peace, Big Bob Tonyan. And Mercedes Lewis essentially is going to be their starting tight end this week. I've seen some people excited about Josiah De Guerra. He was playing exclusively on third downs, playing primarily as an H-back last week. They're going to be playing Mercedes Lewis a lot of snaps this week. And, Jordan Love, first start, is he going to have, the confidence to rifle it downfield repeatedly? We'll see. Might find his safe little blanket with Mercedes Lewis. He'll work his way into a couple of my lineups this week, especially if I do play any Jordan Love. Your Sneaky Athlete of the Week is Mercedes Lewis. We will come back with our GPP Roulette lineup of the week, and then we're going to get out of here. All right, here we go. We're going to spin that wheel. All right. For everybody that does not know how this gimmick works, I spin a wheel twice. I have in this beautiful book right here. 36 names printed out where I just pulled them simply from Twitter. If a player gets mentioned more times on Twitter in my first 36, they can get mentioned many, many times. For instance, there are 8 Alberto Cuevanoms out of 36 because everybody was talking about him on Twitter. I spin it twice. I see what it lands on. I put those 2 players in my lineup. We build a lineup from there. If anybody wants to help out from the chat, absolutely feel free. All right, let's spin this thing. First one. We've got ourselves an 11. And the 11 is Alberto Cuevanom. One for 8 Alberto Cuevanoms. Get used to that in your contests, folks. Get used to that in your contest this week. All right, we're going to do one more. 27. And 27 is my favorite player. This one comes courtesy of Chase Vernon and Josh Lark. You were arguing about his over-under this week. Number 27 is Josh Jacobs. So let's quickly get going here on my lineup. Just give me one quick second to pull that up as I swap in. All right, here we go. Oh, geez. Did I just click off of my lineup? I totally did, didn't I? I just hit X on my screen share. Well, it's a little bit awkward. You're going to have to just give me one quick moment. If anyone wants to ask a question or anything in the chat, feel free to, as I help pass this time. I have to re-pull up a screen share. Yeah, one thing this week I saw David talking about the Falcons. That was definitely a last week comment for sure. Definitely no love for the Falcons this particular week up against the Trevor Siemian Saints. I can't imagine anything being such a slow and painful game as the Trevor Siemian Saints. But we'll see. All right, here we go. I've got things loaded up again on DraftKings. I promise my technical difficulties are about to end. I apologize for that. Literally, as I went to hit share screen, immediately wound up hitting X instead right on the thing, and it disappeared for me. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to go plug in. Who do we have again? Josh Jacobs, and, of course, Alberto Cuevanom. Okay, so I'll run through this. I always try to do something where, I actually go off of the guys that I had. So, look, I'm playing Alberto. I'm already committing to touching on that game. why don't I just go all the way out? Why don't I just play the Cowboy stack? So I'm going to go and lock in Dak. I know David was talking about this earlier. I'm going to keep this, I always say this GBP roulette. So this is going to be a situation where, I'm not going to be acting like it's a small field. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play Lamb because I think Cooper's just going to be like 3 times the ownership of Lamb. And unlike the Kelsey Hill situation, I think it's totally earned. Just because, he's $1,500 more and he shouldn't be. That's fine. I spent way down for Alberto. Josh Jacobs is pretty cheap. I have money to spend. I'm going to go ahead and play CD Lamb in this spot. And I'm just going to skinny stack it, honestly. I'm just going to leave it with a little skinny. Yeah, exactly, David. Lamb to get off the chalk. 100%. I want to make this a little bit different. All right. So I have CD Lamb in there. I've got Dak. I could, I'll consider adding Cedric Wilson if I need like a really cheap wide receiver. We'll see. So I'm in a spot where I'm kind of chalk-ish, not super chalk. I'm willing to secondary correlate Jacobs, and I'm a big fan of Tony this week. I think what we saw the last couple of weeks was really, really exciting. Down game against Kansas City, but he got hurt. He was working his way back. I don't think he's going to be like super, super popular, so I'm totally fine with that. David wants to play Dalvin Cook. Yeah, why not? Look, if there's someone you want to play in this slot, we'll play him. So let's do Dalvin Cook. Where am I at? 4,700 remaining per player. I'm just going to go ahead and put a placeholder defense. Put the Chiefs. All right, so I've got 59.50 now per player. I'm going to do 2 wide receiver slots. I'm going to play Marquise Brown because I'm playing Dalvin Cook. And I will correlate that to Marquise Brown. And then, you know what? I could play Cortland Sutton, which is like kind of interesting, even though it's 2 Denver people. Booker, I don't really want to do that. You know what? What's Bateman? What's Bateman's salary? Down to 4K. What could I do with 7,900? I could play. Oh, and I could play Tyreek Hill. How chalky is this? I don't think Jacobs Tony's very chalky. I'm off with Lamb. I don't think Cook. Baby. Yeah, I'm fine locking in Tyreek Hill. So I'll do this. Oh, I don't want to play Chiefs D with Tyreek Hill though. Can I play a different defense? Oh, I'd play Vikings D. Yeah, I play Vikings D with Dalvin Cook. That's totally fine. All right. This week, here we go. We're good. Yeah, get out of my head. Exactly. Sorry, I had to go to Bateman. I had to switch it up just because the salaries work. But let's do this. Our lineup of the week here, we got Dak Prescott stacked with CD Lamb. And we've got Albert Okwuegbunam coming back, the GOAT. We got Josh Jacobs, my favorite running back in the National Football League, of course, with Kadarius Toney, a little mini stack. Got another little mini stack, Dalvin Cook with Rashad Bateman. And then we're going to plug in Tyreek Hill. We're going to plug in the Vikings defense. That's a wrap for today's show. Thank you for those who submitted questions earlier in the Discord that I got to get to. Thanks so much for people in the chat, especially David. Thanks for all of the help. I'm going to go have a nice rest of my Saturday. I'm going to build up my lineups. I enjoy you building up your lineups. If anybody wants to get one-on-one DFS for advice throughout the night, hop in the Bulletproof Discord. I have a channel in there called Run the Damn Lineups. And basically every Saturday night, I'm going to host a little AMA. I'm going to be going through, I'm going to be building my lineups. And as I do that, feel free to send me your questions. Otherwise, thank you very much to Tom, of course, for doing everything to help out on the back end. Make sure to check out mine and Tom and Billy's show from last night. We did a little mock draft. We talked about Odell. We talked about Baker. We talked about Rodgers, everything going on this midway point of the season. And, of course, check out everything we got going on at the Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast Network. Check out everything Tom's doing with Trophy Smack. Check out the Pareto Principles, my Week 9 DFS article and player profiler. And find me on Twitter at FF_RTDB. Have a great weekend and goodbye.
It says here we should work in teams. Who wants to be my spotter?
I don't think you should be doing too much gambling tonight, Alan.
Gambling? Who said anything about gambling? It's not gambling when you know you're going to win.